Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Now, if you listened to yesterday's programme, and if you've been following this programme on Twitter, and if you've been following DavidIke.com on Twitter, and many other people on Twitter, you will know is that on Sunday morning, the BBC, in its The Big Questions programme hosted by Nicky Campbell, tackled, well, that's what they claimed they were doing, the debate about climate change. Now, I won't dwell too much on it because I got into it in great detail yesterday. The Green Party were present, the Friends of the Earth were present, and our first guest, Piers Corbyn, the meteorologist, check out weatheraction.com, Piers was present. It was a shocking display of, well, again, without dwelling on what I said yesterday and repeating what I said yesterday, as somebody who's grown up in commercial radio and who's been taught to do it properly, it's fair to say Nicky Campbell's conduct was disgraceful. You can't blame the Greens or Friends of the Earth for their conduct in the debate, but Campbell basically aligning my first guest with people like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, not giving him sufficient time to answer the questions posed to him by the Green Party and Friends of the Earth, and then not putting his points to the Friends of the Earth and the Green Party representatives was pretty horrifying. In terms of, as far as the BBC goes, it's about one of the worst examples I've ever seen of institutional BBC bias. Of course, we invited the Green Party, Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace onto the programme. We began inviting them yesterday. Every one of them came back and said they weren't interested simply because, as far as they were concerned, the debate has been had. It's been had, and they all said, and they must be singing from the same hymn sheet or the same script, they said the debate has been won. Let's welcome to the programme. He was with us back in early January as a meteorologist and, as I said, the webmaster of weatheraction.com. Piers Corbyn joins us now. Hello. From London. How are you, Piers?
I'm superb.
Well, thanks for coming on. Yeah, well, no, thanks for coming on. What was your experience on Sunday morning? What did you make of the way it was introduced and the way Nicky Campbell moved the debate along? What are your own thoughts on that?
Well, he clearly wanted to paint the picture that I was a minority, and the correct idea was the BBC common belief that man-made climate change is real, dangerous, has to be dealt with, and that anybody who opposes it is a madman. So he was trying to put me into that context. Now, I came back with some very clear questions, which we can go into, but the point is that they didn't answer those questions, and he didn't even try and make them answer those questions. He gave them the first word and the last word. But afterwards, it was very interesting because I did get across some very, very, very clear points. Namely, showed that carbon dioxide is actually not the cause of things, but it is the changes in carbon dioxide follow from changes in temperature. I posed questions which they failed to answer. And afterwards, rather than people rushing up to them saying to them, well done, there were people rushing up to me saying, well done. And when I pursued the three varieties of green CO2 stuff there, to ask them to, participate in the future debate, they refused. In fact, they avoided me. You see, and of course, people could see that these people were avoiding me, and I think it's very interesting in that the feeling of the audience was much more positive towards what I had to say than the BBC would care to admit.
I agree. I think Jonathan Bartley didn't come across very well. He came across as very arrogant.
Well, that's
and it doesn't play well with people. But I'm going to do what Nicky Campbell didn't do. I'm going to do it properly. I'm going to put a few questions to you,
okay,
and I'm going to shut up and let you answer them.
Okay.
What we would have done tonight, by the way, and what we offered you and the Greens was an initial 5-minute statement uninterrupted each, followed by questions posed by me to each of you, and then at the end, then you guys getting a chance to put questions to one another. So they were well assured, these people yesterday, that this would be, an absolutely proper and professional debate, but they decided not to come on. I did actually tweet Jonathan Bartley again after he got back to me to ask him to send me any documentary evidence to prove that the debate had been won. and of course I didn't get anything. I didn't get anything back. Piers, one of the things that I get from people who listen to this programme, nice people I think, who do believe that climate change is real, they say that while we have had climate change in the past, it has been pretty extreme. It's never been as rapid as this, and because of that, we must have something to do with it. The massive carbon output by man because of industrial progress must have something to do with that, because of the rapidity of temperature rises and all these extreme weather events. Answer that. Why are they wrong?
Well, it's just not true. We have had a rapid rise in world temperatures, which ended around 2002 or so. That is true. We have. And now we have temperatures declining, and the international organisations are busy trying to hide that and actually are doing fraudulent things about temperatures. But whatever they're doing in detail, and whether you believe it or not, it is clear from the data, and we've got a graph of their official data on our website, which anyone can get to today, weatheraction.com, or following me on Twitter, at Piers_Corbyn, where this graph is there. And it shows that we've had these rapid rises in the 10 years up to around 2002 or 3. And we had another rapid rise, followed by a fall, obviously, 60 years before that. And another rapid rise 60 years before that one. So there is a 60-year cyclicity in rapid rises. And we just happen to be in one of them.
So this isn't the first time we've seen such a rapid rise?
Absolutely not.
Now, can I just ask you just on one thing? I don't want to be jumping down your throat. You said that there was fraud going on, that people were manipulating the graphs. Give us the proof of that. Who's doing that, and how do we know they're doing it?
Well, the World Meteorological Organization, NOAA, the American setup, and the Climate Research Unit of East Anglia. In fact, to be very specific, they produce data sets every year of global temperatures, and we were doing research in 2004, and I said to Judy, I'll have a look at this new data set, and she looked and she said, oh, that's fine, Piers, there's interesting stuff this year, but the past years have changed. I said, what do you mean the past years have changed? And she said, well, the past years have changed, it's not what it was. So we knew then there was something strange going on. Now what we know, and there's a graph of it on our website, that every year they have selected out some stations and selected in others. So they're all real data stations, but they choose the ones which, for whatever reason, are rising at present, because obviously there's going to be local variations of all sorts, and cutting out the ones which are showing falling temperatures at present. So by this and successive years, they manipulate current temperatures to be higher and our past temperatures to be lower. And if you compare the data sets for which they produced around 2010 with the ones they produced around 2000 or 2001, there's the rise in temperature in that 10 years is been increased in the latest data set by 0.5 degree. So what they've done is committed 0.5 degree temperature rise fraud on world temperatures. Now, if you take off 0.5 degree on current world temperatures, the recent peak around reaching, as I said, around 2002, 3 or whatever, comes to about the same as the big peak at the end of the 1930s or early 1940s.
And you would...
There's been no global warming since then. We've just had fluctuations around a 60-year cycle and many other cycles, and we're entering a longer, cooler cycle upon which there will be the 60-year fluctuation.
And you would say that there's a 0.5 degree mistake or manipulation of the data by them absolutely blows their models out of the water, basically.
Absolutely, totally. 0.1 of a degree is enough for them to jump up and down. Actually, 0.01 of a degree. Because the main thing they were doing in these is manipulating the data, for example, to make 1998, I think it was warmer than 2010 before, and they just managed to switch it round so 2010 was warmer than 1998. I think that for those 2 years.
Right.
But so they can say the world is getting warmer. They're just fiddling the data to make it look as if there's ongoing, everlasting warming. And it is just not true.
Now, I'm here to put the questions to you that presumably they would have put to you if they were here. So tell me about the claims that Arctic sea ice has been declining a lot, decade on decade, over the last 20, 30 years, is that we're losing 13.3% of Arctic sea ice per decade.
Well,
that's dangerous, right? That's what they would say. We should take that seriously.
Okay. First of all, if you want to look at ice, you need to look at the world. Now, the world ice is increasing very substantially and has been continually for the last 50 years. Because most of the ice is in the Antarctic, and that has been increasing rapidly.
Can we prove that now, my friend?
Yeah, that is their own data, but they only report on BBC Arctic ice, because that does show a lot more sensitive fluctuations. Now, the way they report it is biased. They broadcast something when it melts and don't broadcast it when it refreezes, because that sort of thing is happening all the time. What is actually happening now is there has been quite a lot of melting, that is true, and that has now ended, and we've got, generally speaking, growth of ice. But to describe this as evidence of man-made climate change or even global warming is actually nonsense, because during the last mini ice age, what's called the Dalton minimum of solar activity and world cooling around 1800 to 1820 or so, or 1795 to 1820. There was one year called the Year of No Summer, 1816, and that year, and was reported by the Admiralty to the Royal Society, was one in which they had noticed a great lack of sea ice in the Arctic. So that was during a very cold period, a bit like 2012. You see, this type of thing happened, which was another year of no summer in the United Kingdom and Ireland, for example. So what happens in the Arctic is to do not with overall temperatures, but to do with circulation patterns. And when we have this wild jet stream, which is the jet stream of upper air moving fast, but moving more north and south, as a wild motion, we also have much more variations in ocean currents. And it seems that was happening in 1816 during the last mini ice age, as is happening now. And you also have to be clear, the air temperature is not enough to give substantial melting of the ice. I mean, the ice needs a lot of heat to melt.
In the ocean.
And that is best delivered by ocean currents. And that is exactly what was happening, what has been happening recently, and what was happening in the early 1800s.
It's 22 minutes to the top of the hour. Piers Corbyn is on the programme. Go to weatheraction.com. Piers is a meteorologist. He's a scientist. He's a man who studied climate change and the claims about climate change for many years now. He absolutely does not believe that man-made carbon dioxide is driving climate change. He's been on TV recently, particularly on Sunday last, on the big questions on the BBC, when the conduct of the presenter was absolutely shocking. I mean, I am actually getting tweets, Piers, which is good, from people who, I mean, I'm getting plenty of tweets from people who support you. But I'm getting some tweets from people who don't, and I like that. And they're saying, Richie, look, Piers can't tell us honestly that the upscale of CO2 production by man post-industrial revolution has no bad effects whatsoever on the planet. It must be affecting. By its very presence, it must be having an impact on the Earth. Do you deny that completely, that it doesn't have any effect?
I do deny that completely, and I'll tell you why. You see, if carbon dioxide is driving temperatures and man's carbon dioxide is in charge, then you've got to somehow explain how man's carbon dioxide, which is only 4% of the total flux of carbon dioxide in and out of the oceans and land, how is that 4% governing the other 96%? And to be specific, termites produce 10 times more CO2 or CO2 equivalent in methane than mankind.
Go on, Piers, do they? That's an amazing statistic, really.
Termites do. Now, this is the fact, and there's all lots of other things. So man is a 4% contributor to this. So the idea that man can run the other CO2, which does its own thing. I mean, if the global warmers believe that termites follow man's bidding, then okay. That is the only situation in which their theory of man-made climate change can work. What Obama should do, if he believes that CO2 is the driver, they should have a war on termites. And I'm totally serious on that. if they're not going to have a war on termites, they're wasting their time playing around with mankind's little 4%. So that just does away with the idea of man having a decisive influence anyway. Now, the question is CO2 itself having a decisive influence? And bear in mind, CO2 is a trace gas. If the atmosphere was represented by Big Ben Tower, carbon dioxide would be 1.25 inches on top of it, 0.04%. Man's contribution to that would be a sliver, a millimetre on top of that also, i.e. a layer of bird dropping on the top of Big Ben Tower. So that's man's contribution to atmosphere. But okay, suppose there's all these, crucial processes. The actual evidence is that the amount of CO2 does not control temperature. The evidence is that temperatures control CO2.
But you're not worried, sorry to interrupt you, so you're not worried then about the mass growth, the economic growth of certain massive countries around the world, like China, like India, for example, Pakistan, and productivity in those countries. You say that no matter how big and how rapid things grow in those countries and they burn carbon, you're not worried about that. It's not going to affect us.
Not worried about it at all. In fact, the smoke they produce, soot, which is unhealthy, nitrous oxide and nitrogen dioxide from chimneys, which they haven't removed, but all those things can be removed. So that real pollution has to be dealt with, but carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is plant food. And in the last millions of years, in geological time, carbon dioxide levels have been 10 or 20 times the current levels. And there was no runaway warming then. There's not a relationship in geological stuff between carbon dioxide and temperatures. The only relationship you can find is about a lag of 800 years typically. When the seas warm up, carbon dioxide is driven out at the end of each ice age. And when the seas cool down at the start of ice ages, carbon dioxide is drawn in, typically with a lag of about 800 years. So the extra CO2 we've had around now is not put there by man. It's probably due to the medieval warm period, a delayed effect due to ocean circulation. And when man adds some now, most of it goes into the sea, and the more he adds, the more will go into the sea, so long as the sea is cool enough.
By the way, I've just had an email from somebody basically calling me names, saying that I'm doing a piss poor job of putting the other side to you. I'm doing my best, listener. Remember, the Green Party, Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, who are supposed to know about this stuff, or claim that they do, should be here putting the points to Piers Corbyn that I'm trying to put to him. So don't have a go at me, have a go at the Green Party. Exactly. I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here. My opinion is well known. I never tried to hide it. My sympathies are with the opinions of Piers Corbyn, which I was honest enough to say yesterday and last week and the week before. Now, a couple of questions that we want to get through, quick questions before we move on. Yep. You said on the big questions, and you might have been a little bit disingenuous. You said that you talked about how big oil and gas, how it suits them to push this agenda. And you kind of insinuated that scientists who believe in climate change might be being influenced by these people. But is it not fair to say that there are plenty of academics now, plenty of them, whom we can't say are all bought and paid for by some agenda or another, who genuinely do believe in man-made climate change that is going to be catastrophic? And we have to keep them in mind, and we have to be honest and say they are out there, right?
I think there are some, and I think they should be prepared to come forward and say why they believe that. But the actual percentage of scientists who've written papers involving the word global warming in the title or abstract, the actual percentage who've done that and said that they believe man is having a decisive influence or an important influence is only 7% tops. Somewhere between 7% and 0.3%.
So tell me what they jumped down your throat on Sunday, and they said the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now, this is what I want to get at.
A group of scientists. Well, they're not. They're political appointees.
But are they scientists as well, though?
No.
So they're not.
The chair of them is a railway engineer. I mean, they've moved him now, but that's
so this is major stuff. So they're claiming that the Intergovernmental...
Time-serving bureaucrats and political allies of various governments.
Now, you would imagine, wouldn't you, Piers, if you're a layperson like me, you would imagine that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change would be full to the brim of academic men and women who know their stuff, but you're saying they're not. There's a railway engineer.
Academics in there that write stuff.
But they're not geologists, they're not climatologists.
But what's their final report is edited by the people in charge, which do it in a political manner. So what you hear is an edited version for political consumption, and what the scientists actually said is modified.
Right, loads of questions. Piers Corbyn is on with us. By the way, if you just tuned in, you've missed a lot so far. It's 14 minutes to the top of the hour. Piers, break down the content of greenhouse gases. Now, we've been hearing the term greenhouse gases for years. What are they? What is contained within greenhouse gases?
A greenhouse gas is just something in the atmosphere which will absorb and emit infrared radiation. So that means it can warm up or cool down more rapidly than the atmosphere of other gases, most of which are very slow to take up energy. So it's for that reason that they can be important. However, just soot or volcanic ash or water vapor, that these all have the same effect of absorbing and emitting infrared. So CO2 alone can't, even if it does have a decisive influence, isn't enough anyway. And their models they use have to involve extra water vapor going in. But their models themselves do not actually work, because they require that extra CO2 will cause warming in the upper atmosphere, the upper troposphere, and should have made a warm spot above the equator compared with 10 years ago. But there is not a warm spot above the equator compared with 10 years ago. There's a cold spot. And we have explanations for that to do with rapid daily fluctuations in temperatures and changes in the efficiency of emissions to space. But the point is their model does not actually work, and there isn't a correlation between carbon dioxide going up and world temperatures going up. As I said, the only correlation is a lag of hundreds of years.
Right, Piers Corbyn is on with us. Remember, we've got Piers for another 15 minutes. Time is flying by. Weatheraction.com. All the information Piers is talking about now is on his website. A couple of listeners came on, Piers, to say that whenever they talk climate change on television, they often show smoke pouring from great big chimney stacks, which is propaganda, because that isn't CO2 apparently.
Well, it's not CO2. That's steam. Okay, well, steam is steam. You know, you can think of it as a problem or not, but that's not CO2. Look, CO2 is a good thing. It is plant food. We are in one of the lowest periods of CO2 in the last 100 million years. You know, if we want better crops, you want more CO2. If you double the amount of CO2, and they do this in tomato greenhouses, you get 40% more rapid growth of tomatoes, and that is a good thing.
We've put out, I'm just reminding the listeners that we've put out calls all day yesterday and spoke to representatives from the Green Party and Friends of the Earth. They were kind of arrogant. They said the debate was won, it was over, it was all about solutions now to save the planet. And they did say that on the present course, Piers, they said that we will reach a point of no return midway through this century. Well, that's going to be catastrophic for people.
Well, it's complete rubbish, because if that's true, there would have been points of no return many times in geological history, but that they weren't points of no return because we are here. I mean, life was not destroyed by some frying process. Look, if they say the debate is over, they've got to say when it was over and what was the decisive point made, which made it over. Now, they know what they say is not true, which is why they're failing to turn up. Because I know when I go to scientific meetings, at least the people there do have the decency to answer questions when I ask them. They don't
listen, yeah.
Yeah, they don't say, shut up, Piers, the debate is over. I mean, they might like to say that, but they don't, to be fair, you know. And what they said at one important meeting in the Royal Society about 3 years ago was, I said, look, okay, what evidence do you rely on for the CO2-driven theory of climate? And on Earth, what evidence on Earth have you got? And she came up with 3. She said, 1, what's happening on Venus? There's a lot of CO2. Now, Venus is not on Earth, by the way, but of course, Venus is nearer the sun and it's got a thicker atmosphere. So that doesn't hold, but that's what she said. Second thing she said, the cooling process I'd pointed out existed, whereby plants grow more when there's more CO2 and therefore transpire more water vapor and therefore cool the surface where they grow, surface of the Earth, more. She said my estimates of how much that was were overestimates. Well, I said, well, okay, I don't know, but the point is we just made that happen. And the third thing she says, we know it can't be anything else. Now, this is not a scientific argument. This is, in fact, stupid, right? Now, that discussion, which was meant to be an Royal Society discussion, was not recorded in the minutes. And it was down there as a discussion meeting. It
can't be anything else. Why are they so evangelical about it? Why are they so absolutely, almost frenzied in the way they approach it? Why?
They have a political agenda. Now, I asked more recently at a Bloomberg public meeting on the matter in Bloomberg, financial information system in central London, and Julia Slingo was there, who's an eminent scientist involved in these type of things, in long range and short range forecasting and so forth. And she didn't come up with those 3 because she knows they're nonsense. She said, "Oh, Piers, we're now in a completely unique situation." But she wouldn't clarify. Well, it said, "What do you mean unique?" She said, "Oh, well, it's unique. It hasn't happened before." Now, of course, every situation, every moment of the universe is unique in some sense. But to describe this time as unique in atmospheric terms or temperature terms is absurd, because it's the coldest 700 years we've had in the last 10,000 is just happening now. The amount of CO2 is not the lowest it's ever been. It's not the highest it's ever been. It's pretty close to the lowest, but there's nothing special. The only special thing, of course, is what's happening on the sun. Namely, it's quiet, but she's talking about CO2. And she just left it as that. It's somehow unique. Which, of course, if you have a belief like that, which is a religious statement, you can't argue with it. It's like, well, if it's unique, end of story.
You know what was the big game changer for me? Because when I was in commercial radio in the late 90s and in the 2000s, I would have been interviewing people saying that climate change was real and it was serious, and I would have been sympathetic to them. I certainly would not have been Nicky Campbell. I've never behaved like that in any radio programme I've ever presented, but I would have been sympathetic to them. There's no doubt.
The BBC have an agenda. They want to promote man-made climate change. The governments love it because it can enable them to do more taxation. And oil companies love it, as I said. Look on their websites. They say very clearly, we believe in man-made climate change and we believe there should be solutions, and they must involve a uniform price for carbon.
Yeah.
Now, that means holding up oil prices so that it's profitable to burn food to make biofuels and so forth, and run inefficient things like wind farms. So they know it helps them keep up oil price, and that means stuff in the ground that was worth nothing is suddenly worth billions.
Isn't it funny the way they use it? The other side uses it, don't they? The other side says that people like you are in bed with big oil and coal, but of course that doesn't add up either. I've got to put this to you.
Look, Saudi Arabia is not playing ball with this game to keep up oil price right now, because they're overproducing in order to undermine the Iranian and Russian economies. But the general thrust of what they've been doing over the last 10 years is exactly to hold up oil price.
And of course the Saudis said they need more oil to bomb the bejesus out of Yemeni men, women and children. We could be here all night. Right, I've got to ask you this. You'd expect me to ask you anyway. Your brother, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, who says some things that we like, and doesn't say some things that we would like him to say, as you and I spoke about before. But I'm not going to criticise him, certainly not to you anyway. Jeremy believes that climate change is real. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think I support Jeremy 100% as leader of the Labour Party and as a future Prime Minister, and think, he's doing tremendous things to actually stop the crazy race that the Tories have got to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. That has to end. Right? Now, within the context of this, there are many policies. Jeremy's leader of the Labour Party, and I hope that some of the things I and others say will open up more discussion about the applicability of man-made climate change, because there is a big problem, and he knows this, that the the climate change rules are being used to run down British industry. They're forcing up energy charges. They've been a very big factor in closing down steelworks in northeast of England. And him and others want to have an exception made for energy supplied to those people, which doesn't involve the energy surcharge for climate change payments. So, there is some meeting of minds between the different camps there. But he's got to go along with the Labour Party policy and have discussions in the normal way. And the Climate Change Act does, in fact, say there has to be discussions as the science changes. And we know the science is changing because the jet stream is doing completely crazy things, which are not in the CO2 warmist book right now. So,
or solar activity, which is kind of amazing.
Solar activity is moving.
That was what gave it away for me, the solar activity. What about those who, like some of my close friends and others who believe that the spectre of climate change is being used to transform society and make us, a more authoritarian society?
It is absolutely.
You're absolutely certain of that?
Yeah, well, all governments like to have a big fear, so they can put people in line to get out of the way of the big fear, and therefore, of course, they can control them in all ways. The nuclear power thing is one of those products. You see, to run a nuclear power system, you've got to have a pretty strong state apparatus to keep the waste safe, stop people stealing the waste to make it into bombs, and so forth. You need a strong state apparatus, so it fits into those who like a strong state. Now, of course, the left used to oppose these nuclear power stations for that reason. Now they support them because they believe CO2 is the bogey. And that is
you could be described as a conspiracy theorist there with respect to the nuclear power station. So present some evidence to the skeptics about the nuclear power agenda.
Well, they've come up with nuclear power when it's very, very expensive. And, of course, if they really wanted to help us, they wouldn't come up with something that's very expensive. Now, what about, as you call, conspiracies, and where does all these ideas come from? Well, there are people who are deluded. There are people who want to do something good to save the planet, and they think this is one of them. There are people who regret the Berlin Wall falling down or whatever and want to do things by another way, and this type of organisation involving extra state spending is good for them. But the origins of a lot of the ideas for climate change and making it an important issue come from the Club of Rome, and which of course is an extreme, super rich organisation which like to find ways of making money. Now, man-made climate change is very, very profitable for anybody involving asset stripping when you destroy industry. It's anybody involved in carbon trading. As long as there's trade on anything, money can be made. So this model of meddling in the economies is very good for finance capitalists, hedge funds and the like, which of course is what a lot of politicians are run by.
We're going to wrap it up in a couple of minutes. Thanks for coming on. Again, absolute, I've got to condemn again that political parties whom were invited onto a programme, whom they were given the evidence that the programme has a lot of listeners, which it does, that it isn't, some Mickey Mouse thing. Yes, it isn't on the BBC, this programme, and it isn't on commercial radio, but it's got an enormous audience on the platforms that it is on. So they were given this information. They were given an absolute guarantee that Piers would have equal time, that he wouldn't be able to dominate it. Not that he would. You can hear by his demeanour that Piers Corbyn is a gentleman. He sounds like a gentleman. I promised them they would have equal time. They haven't come on. It's as simple as that. When you were on last, I got to ask you this. You are a meteorologist. You watch the skies and the atmosphere maybe more than anybody else. Is there a covert geoengineering programme going on at the moment above our skies?
There is geoengineering going on, yes. It is done by, it's got government sanctions as far as agreements as far as I can see, but it's indulged in by deluded people that think they can, save the planet in some way by putting things there which are probably reflecting sunlight. But and also there is meddlings in the ionosphere with with HARP and so on, injecting microwaves into the ionosphere to change things. Now,
is it true? Just before you go on,
all these things are happening. Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the final word, but I just want to on that.
And they should be stopped.
So these heavy metals, then, do you think there's a direct correlation with these heavy metals and illnesses that people are developing?
I don't know. I'm not an expert.
No, fair play. No, I'm just putting that out there
to say that. But I have heard that. I mean, clearly, any heavy metal knocking around is not good. I mean, that is definitely.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of aluminium and dementia, for example.
Yeah, no. I think they are dangerous. Yes, and I would say they would, if there's enough of it around, there will be contributions to that type of illness. Absolutely.
Listen, I'm going to give you the final word, right? I'm going to give you 30 seconds. We're going to pretend that the Greens are here. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Tell us in 30 seconds before we let you go why there's no doubt in your mind that man-produced, human-produced CO2 isn't driving climate change. 30 seconds, Mr. Corbyn, and then we'll wrap it up.
Look, if it's true, because man only produces 4% of CO2, then man has to govern what the other 96% of life are doing, such as termites. So if you people are serious, you should be having war on termites, not war on driving cars. There's no evidence that the termites follow what man does, so your theory fails at the first hurdle.
You've given me some headline when we put this on YouTube tomorrow about termites. Termites, by the way, my friend. I've got to resist being cheeky with the headline because this is very serious stuff. It isn't funny. Listen, it was great having you on. We didn't expect we'd have you back on as soon. I know you were back on in early January.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. And like I say to all of our guests like you have an open door whenever you want to come back on to have a chat about something that's developing.
Right.
Piers Corbyn, by the way, folks, weatheraction.com. That's where the evidence that Piers has presented tonight, that's where you'll find it. Look after yourself, Piers. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And bye for now. Lovely guy, isn't he, Piers, whether you agree with him or not?